Supermarine Spitfire is widely regarded as the most famous fighter aircraft ever built. It played a crucial role in Britain's defense, became a national icon, and over 20,000 units were produced in more than 24 variants. But you've probably never heard what the Spitfire's real weaknesses were, and they weren't what you'd expect. The lesser-known aspects of the Spitfire extend beyond its combat record. They include the story of its creator, who never witnessed its use in battle, the period when the Spitfire was outperformed and the RAF lost air superiority, and the challenges faced when adapting the aircraft for carrier operations. This is the full and turbulent story of the Spitfire, from the Battle of Britain to the Pacific, and every dark chapter in between. The Spitfire's origins lie in competitive racing. Its designer, Reginald Joseph Mitchell, spent years at Supermarine developing high-speed seaplanes for the Schneider Trophy.
Someday, I'm going to build a plane that'll be just like a bird.
A leading international air race. His S-6B secured the trophy for Britain in 1931, and this expertise in speed and aerodynamics directly influenced the Spitfire's development. In 1934, Mitchell began designing a new fighter, initially named the Type 300. The Air Ministry would later name it the Spitfire, a name Mitchell reportedly described as a bloody silly name. Mitchell's innovation was to combine existing technologies such as elliptical wings, underwing radiators, and monocoque construction into a streamlined airframe powered by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The prototype's first flight occurred on March 5, 1936 at Eastleigh, achieving a speed of 349 miles per hour. Before testing was complete, the RAF ordered 310 units. However, the story soon took a somber turn. In 1933, Mitchell was diagnosed with cancer. Despite undergoing a colostomy, he continued working with a bag strapped to his side, often observing Spitfire prototype tests from his car when unable to be in the office. Reginald Mitchell died on the 11th of June 1937 at age 42, never witnessing a production Spitfire in flight or the war that would cement its legacy. The Spitfire earned its legendary reputation during the Battle of Britain in the summer of 1940. However, the hurricane was more numerous throughout the battle, and Hurricane pilots were responsible for destroying 7 out of every 10 German aircraft shot down during this period. The Spitfire's role was different. RAF Fighter Command used a deliberate strategy. Hurricanes attacked the bombers while the faster, more agile Spitfires engaged the Messerschmitt Bf 109 escorts. And it worked. The Spitfire had a lower attrition rate and a better victory-to-loss ratio than the Hurricane, largely because of its superior performance. In the right hands, it could outmaneuver the Bf 109 in a turning fight. Losses were severe. Between August and October 1940, 208 Spitfires were lost in combat, 7 were destroyed on the ground, and 42 more in flying accidents. In the final week of August, nearly 1/5 of RAF fighter pilots were killed or wounded. Replacement pilots often had minimal training on the aircraft, with some never having fired their guns in flight and faced experienced Luftwaffe veterans. Following the Battle of Britain, the Spitfire appeared unmatched. The RAF launched offensives over occupied France, confident that the Mark V, equipped with a more powerful Merlin engine producing approximately 1,440 horsepower, was the premier fighter aircraft. For a time, this assessment was accurate. In August 1941, everything changed. The Germans introduced the Focke-Wulf FW-190, which rendered the Spitfire Mark V outclassed in most aspects. The FW-190 was faster, had a superior roll rate, and could easily evade the Spitfire in a dive. The Spitfire maintained only a slight advantage at very high altitudes. Losses increased significantly, and pilots reported feeling powerless against the new German fighter. Air superiority over the continent began to erode. The solution arrived with the Merlin 61 engine featuring a two-stage supercharger. Test pilots described the first Mark 9 Spitfire equipped with this engine as outstandingly better. The Mark 9, essentially a Mark 5 airframe with the new engine, was rapidly deployed as an emergency measure. It restored parity, and its first combat with the FW-190 in July 1942 yielded immediate results. But those months of inferiority had cost the RAF dearly in both aircraft and experienced pilots. This adaptability distinguished the Spitfire. It was the only Allied fighter in continuous production and development throughout the war. From 1936 to 1948, it evolved from the Mark I to the Mark 24, encompassing more than 24 variants. The original Merlin engine, producing approximately 1,000 horsepower, was eventually replaced by the Rolls-Royce Griffon, which delivered over 2,000 horsepower. Certain variants were optimized for high-altitude interception, while others were modified for low-level photo reconnaissance, even painted pink and stripped of weapons. Fighter bomber versions carried 500-pound bombs. And then there was the variant that would cause the most heartbreak of all, the Seafire. By the end of the war, the Spitfire's top speed increased from 360 to over 450 miles per hour. Its armament evolved from 8 rifle-caliber machine guns to 4 20mm cannons, and it underwent 13 different propeller designs. No other fighter of the era experienced such extensive development. The narrative reaches its most challenging point here. The Royal Navy urgently required a modern carrier-based fighter, and the Spitfire was selected for adaptation. Modifications included an arrestor hook and a reinforced fuselage, resulting in the Seafire. The first successful carrier landing occurred in January 1942, performed by Lieutenant Commander Bramwell aboard HMS Illustrious. But here's the thing. The Spitfire was never designed for carrier operations. Its narrow-track undercarriage was weak and fragile, and the long nose impaired forward visibility during approach. The stall speed was dangerously close to the approach speed, leaving little margin for error. One pilot summarized the issue. The Seafire was not robust enough for carrier landings. The most severe difficulties occurred during Operation Avalanche, the Salerno landings in September 1943. 11 Seafire squadrons operated from carriers in nearly windless conditions. Escort carriers could achieve only 17 knots, resulting in minimal wind over the flight deck and making landings extremely challenging. Arrestor hooks were torn off, aircraft skidded off the deck, undercarriages collapsed, and planes collided with parked aircraft. Over 4 days, 42 Seafires were lost to accidents. Not a single one was lost to enemy action. That is worth repeating. Every Seafire lost at Salerno was destroyed by the act of trying to land on the carrier. One pilot who was there described the scene. They had come roaring in, dropping into the park, going over the side, until the hangars were choked with wrecks. Overall, up to 50% of Seafire losses throughout the war were caused by landing accidents. The beautiful airframe that was so perfect in the sky was simply not built for the violent demands of carrier operations. The Spitfire also operated in the Pacific, encountering the Mitsubishi A6M0. And once again, the Spitfire story wasn't straightforward. Over Darwin, Australia, RAF and RAAF Spitfires experienced significant losses against Japanese naval aircraft. The earlier Mark V variants were ill-suited to the environment, and the Spitfire's limited fuel capacity proved a major disadvantage in the expansive Pacific theater. Spitfire pilots adopted the American tactic of avoiding turning engagements with the Zero, instead leveraging superior speed and diving capability. Air superiority was only established with the arrival of the Mark VIII, which replaced the outclassed Mark V. Despite all these dark chapters, the Spitfire's record remains exceptional. Over 20,000 units were produced in more than 24 variants. It served in every major theater of the war, including Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, the Far East, and the Pacific. By June 1944, 1 in every 4 aircraft in RAF use was a Spitfire. But perhaps the most remarkable fact is this: the Spitfire was the only British fighter in continuous production before, during, and after the Second World War. It remained in RAF service into the 1950s. The Spitfire was never the perfect weapon. Its designer died before seeing it fight. It was outclassed by the FW-190 and had to be reinvented. Its carrier variant was a beautiful disaster, and in the Pacific it struggled against conditions it was never designed for. Yet this adaptability defines the Spitfire's legacy. It continued to evolve and adapt, ultimately outlasting every adversary it encountered. This overview only introduces the Spitfire's history. Further details, including the experiences of its pilots, notable aces, key battles, and lesser-known variants, will be covered in Part 2, available next Friday. If you found this story compelling, please like the video to help us share more overlooked stories from the Second World War. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss Part 2, dropping next Friday. We welcome your comments on your location and suggestions for future topics. Thank you for watching and for helping preserve these stories.